majestically and kicks the goal. Making something out of nothing.
Malcheski, is that the grand final?
Jimmy Bartell can make a hero of himself.
That is a brilliant snap. He's kicked the goal and Freeman will win it after the siren. What a game of football at the MCG.
So welcome to another episode of The Protected Zone. I'm Eddie J, and my co-host over in West Padang is...
This is Linton, and I'm overlooking this mountain of fire erupting, Mount Merapi. It's literally known as the Mountain of Fire.
And where is Mount Merapi?
Merapi is about 120 kilometers north of Padang. So in fact, I can't see it. And the eruption seems to be kind of stopped today. A couple of days ago, it erupted 6 times. Yesterday, it erupted 9 times, but I can't see it here. So it seems it's contained.
Well, on the Protected Zone, we always look to nature to see if there's any relevance between what's occurring in the natural world and AFL. Do you think there's any relevance for Mount Merapi and an explosion and the AFL?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. Merapi is not the tallest. The range, the spine goes up and down the island of Sumatra, but it's seen by the locals, Minangkabau people, as the birthplace of a nation or birthplace of where Minangkabau people came from. People are encouraged to climb during their life to become a real Minangkabau. So it's a sacred mountain, and it's been erupting since 2011. There's a few eruptions in 2014. And looking at all those histories, along with the history, what happened on the field, on the AFL, I think it may be indicating something interesting. I think it kind of coincides with the sort of revival of the Collingwood football team.
Okay, well, 2017 has been quite an explosive season, so maybe there is some relevance there. But before we do go on, we do have a growing audience, as I've mentioned quite a few times on this program before. And if you'd like to subscribe, you can look us up on iTunes. You can also listen to us through SoundCloud. And we do have the program available on YouTube, although we've had a few copyright issues on YouTube, so we might not go there. But you can find us anywhere on the internet. If all of those avenues fail, you can always look us up on the website, which is theprotectedzone.com.
That sounds good, Eddie. You sound very professional. Now, professional is the name of the game.
That's right, and we are a professional program. We're following a professional sport, and that's what it's all about. But so far, what do you think's been happening within this season?
Well, it's, I can't believe that half of the season's gone. And this season seems to be, as everyone talks about, very even, and lots of nail-biting, hair-raising, mouth-watering, heart-stopping thrillers. I don't know if I can go all the way distance. I mean, every week is chock-a-block of games decided within the last 2 minutes or something, and it's exciting.
I think it is very exciting, and in that final couple of minutes of the Battle of the Coasts, the game between West Coast and Gold Coast, I think my heart actually did stop. Luckily, it did start pumping up after the siren went, but I'm very sure that it did stop. So, heart stoppers, they're good for the game overall, but I'm not sure if they're too good for your health.
Yes, normally when you're watching the games, halfway through, it seems like it's all one-sided, whatever. But, the teams this year seems to be more sort of determined or, come back very quickly. 5-goal deficit doesn't mean anything, and, many teams can sort of wipe out that sort of size deficit, previously seen as, a game-deciding lead in no time.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Like if your team is down by 60 points at the halfway part of the game and you decide, this match is over, and you go down to the shop, well, don't go to the shop, because by the time you come back, your team might be in front again. So it's very difficult to predict this season, but it's a very classic season as far as I can see.
Yes, we had only 6 matches in round 11. What did you think of Port destroying Hawthorn? I think Hawthorn's season's as good as gone, it's safe to say.
Yes, you're absolutely right. There were only 6 games in round 11. And the first one was on the Thursday night. You were not a big fan of the Thursday night games, but Port absolutely thrashed Hawthorn. It was an incredible first half, and they actually kept Hawthorn to their lowest score at halftime ever. And they've been in the competition since 1925.
That was, total domination at its purest, bestest, and brutal.
It was very brutal. Port Adelaide were playing pure football, and it was brutal football at the same time.
And Hawthorn, does that mean Hawthorn was really bad or Port really good?
That's a very good question, but I think in this sort of situation, it was a combination of the two. One team was playing pure, brutal football, and that pure, brutal football made the other team, in this case Hawthorn, it made them fall apart. So it's a classic case of which came first, the chicken or the egg, but I think in this case the chicken came first.
Right, I thought the egg came first, but remains to be seen. And Hawthorn's Alistair Clarkson declared after the game that their season's virtually over. Does that mean they're going to tank?
I'm not sure if they will tank, because if you look at what happened to the Melbourne team in 2007 onwards when they started to tank. Now, for those people that don't understand what tanking is, that means that you've given up on the season, you think that your team hasn't got a chance at all of making the finals, so you start playing all the kids so that your team drops off, it goes lower on the ladder, and then you get a better draft pick. And that supposedly is beneficial to the team. But in the long term, I think it develops a losing culture.
Right, and Hawthorn certainly doesn't want to have that, because it's the dominating side in this century, isn't it?
Yes, I think they're just having a very bad season. But once you develop that losing culture, it's very difficult to shake that off. So I don't think Hawthorn will start tanking. I think they'll play as well as they can throughout the rest of the season, but they're definitely not playing finals this year.
And on Friday night, we had Geelong hosting the game against Adelaide. It was meant to be a preview of this year's grand final, but was it?
Well, I think there's a bit of a misnomer that if people start saying mid-season, this is the grand final preview, even if it's a bad match, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be the grand final preview. Geelong and Adelaide could still meet in the grand final, and it could end up being a lousy match. So that's still a possibility. It's still a long, long way to go before the grand final, but before the match started, yes, we did say that it was possibly a preview for the grand final, and the game was a letdown, so it wasn't such a good match. But mind you, a lot of grand finals over the past 10 or 15 years have been disappointing.
So it could be really a preview?
Could be a preview, yes, it still could be a preview.
Adelaide seems to be kind of choking in that the players didn't seem to know what they're doing. It wasn't as free-flowing as they played in the last 10 rounds. Geelong was very good shutting down their playmakers like Rory Sloane, and Tex Walker wasn't as effective as usual.
Well, I think there's a couple of factors. Last week we did say that Adelaide would win this game, but if Geelong was to win the game, they would have to shut down Rory Sloane and Taylor Walker, which is what they actually did. But I think there's another factor at play here, and it relates to mathematics and geometry. The ground that Geelong plays at is a very, very narrow ground, and most teams cannot adjust to it. And I think that's probably what happened to Adelaide. They didn't have their protractors out, they didn't have their calculators, they couldn't assess what sort of area they were meant to be working in, and that's why they lost the game. The ground is too narrow for them.
I had a quick look at the dimensions of the playing grounds throughout Australia, and indeed Adelaide Oval is 167 metres by 124 metres, while the Cardinia Park, or the Cattery, is 170 by 111. So 8 metres narrower. Now, would that affect?
When you say that it's only 8 metres, you think, well, surely 8 metres shouldn't.
Or 9 metres, sorry, 9 metres, my bad. I don't have my calculator.
That's okay. Well, whether it's 8 metres or 9 metres, most people would think that shouldn't make that much of a difference, but it actually does, because there's surface area, there's the ratio of player to surface area, there's all those sort of things, and if a particular team or a particular player is used to playing on a ground such as Adelaide Oval, which, let's be frank about it, is actually a cricket ground. And then they come to a place where everything's a lot more narrow or the ground is longer. It messes with their minds and they can't actually work out what's going on. And I think that's what happened to them. It's a bit like bats. If they're put into the wrong location and they've got the wrong dimensions, they can't fly around very well.
Yeah, and it is interesting to see if the cats are, real or not. And when they play in the second half, they play West Coast in round 13 and the GWS in week after or week after that. In the ground that is quite different from Cardinia Park. By the way, Melbourne Cricket Ground dimension is 171 by 146, so it is much rounder than the Cardinia Park for sure.
Well, there you go. If Geelong do make it to the grand final, they'll have to adjust their sensory devices to the MCG as well. So, as I mentioned, there's still a long way to go, but let's see what happens. The other match that I noticed was Greater Western Sydney against Essendon. And Greater Western Sydney, for the first time ever in their short history, which began in 2012, they're sitting on top of the ladder.
Yeah. Do you think they can keep on their sort of pointy end?
Well, the only thing that they can do is play against the teams that are presented to them, and the only thing that they can really do is try to keep winning. And they did put in a good performance against Essendon. It was a milestone match for a particular player as well.
Brendan Goddard. Brendan spelled with an O, is that right?
Yes, it's spelled with an O, and that's quite unusual because most Brendans are spelled Brendan. So he's got an unusual spelling, but he's an unusually gifted player.
Yes, he became only the 80th player in the history of AFL to achieve that number. And there are only a very limited number of players who played more games than BJ Goddard.
Well, that is a select group. Only 80 AFL players in the history have played 300 or more games. But I have noticed that over the past maybe 10, 15 years, there are actually more players reaching that milestone of 300 games. Why do you think that might be happening?
I think we may have more games. Now we have top 8 as opposed to top 4 or top 2 in the, bygone days, as well as a sort of sports scientists, that sort of science, development of science. And we, in general, seem to live longer. I think those things are contributing.
Do you think it might have anything to do with the evolutions of humans as well?
Evolution, no, that's a big word. It could be a revolution.
Revolution. I don't want to talk too much about Darwinian theory here, but there must be some reason aside from sports science. And one other match that I noticed was the Battle of the Coast. We did refer to it a little bit before, but that was a real heart stopper. My heart did stop towards the end of the game. And it was the first time that the Gold Coast had defeated the West Coast.
West Coast has been contributing a lot of histories of late. Last week they lost to a Great Western Sydney.
It is good to be part of history, but it seems like the West Coast Eagles have been on the wrong side of history over the past 2 weeks. They lost to Gold Coast for the first time ever. The previous week they lost to Greater Western Sydney for the first time ever. Who else can they lose to for the first time ever?
Who's left? I don't think anyone's left. Maybe the team made up of umpires.
Oh, possibly. That's a possibility. But I think it's sad times for West Coast at the moment because now they've been defeated by every single team in the competition and they were missing their figurehead, Josh Kennedy.
Yeah, we have discussed the problem on the road, but when they don't have Josh Kennedy, the team looked worse. They're playing somewhere in the kindergarten, as if they're a kindergarten team or something.
Yes, it was very unimpressive, and I think they'll need to go back to the drawing board. They've got a game at Subiaco Oval next week, so maybe they'll reclaim their title as the Flat Track Bullies. Let's see how it goes. The other thing I noticed on the weekend was during the match between Fremantle and Collingwood, we had an absolutely fantastic haircut on display. Can you tell me what happened there?
Oh, yeah, the Collingwood spearhead, Billy Elliott, known as Billy, but his real name is Jamie Elliott, who turned up with this haircut with the sort of blonde tinges in hair, and almost like an 80s pop star or something.
Yes, he looked very much like a pop star, 80s or 90s pop star look. When I saw him go onto the ground, I thought, oh no, what's Billy Idol doing on the field? Because that's exactly what he looked like it was absolutely fantastic.
And in that game, thanks to Billy Idol, Collingwood seems to have resurrected its season, it seems. Since the half-time in round 8 or something against Hawthorn, they've been playing like very attacking. There seems to be no tomorrow kind of attitude among the players.
And how much do these haircuts actually influence the development of a team? Is Collingwood a better team now that they've got a few players with more stylish haircuts?
I think so. I mean, it's easy to spot, players like Billy Idol in the field, isn't it? When you look up the ground and, who's there? Oh, there's Billy Idol. Yeah, let's kick to him.
Jamie Elliott, unfortunately, he did injure his ankle towards the end of the game as well. But if he had a few extra strands of hair cut from his head, would that have made a difference? Could he have avoided that injury if he had a even shorter haircut?
Oh, definitely. But it would be difficult for the teammates, to spot him. And talking about his teammates, apparently everyone thought his teammates thought it was diabolical, and some of them was quoted in the media that they were just about to spew.
It seems like whatever happened in that change room, he had a positive effect on them. They did win the game against Fremantle, and they're playing like a finals team, so good luck to them.
Yes, indeed. And, if that works, why don't they, everyone gets haircut or, dyed their hair or, maybe it's time for some AFL players to have a shocking pink or something?
I think that could work. AFL players are always looking for that competitive advantage, so whether it's colourful boots or a stylish hairdo, they're always looking for that competitive advantage, so maybe they need to look at hairstyles. That's one big thing to look out for in the next round.
Indeed.
Start again. It's a nice day for a white wedding. Whoa, what's that nice day to start?
Previously, we mentioned that idea of players wanting to look for a competitive advantage, but what sort of competitive advantages are AFL teams looking for? I've heard that they're actually looking at other codes and other countries for particular sorts of players that can be recruited. Have you heard anything about this?
The AFL is trialling some, basketballers in the US, and they will bring 4 potential players to Australia to trial in September.
But do they realise that basketball and AFL are totally different games?
Yeah, there seems to be some sort of relation between basketball and Australian rules football. Some former basketball players are, in fact, playing very well. The best known example is Collingwood's captain, Scott Pendlebury. He has a bit of basketball background, and it helps that sort of 360-degree awareness. No other code has got that sort of 360-degry awareness where, you can go forward or backward or sideways, upward, down there, and that seems to be the advantage of having basketball players. And mind you, these four Americans they'll bring in, all giants. They're 200 centimeter plus sort of basketballers.
Well, I can remember a few years ago that Israel Folau from Rugby League ended up playing for the Greater Western Sydney, and Gold Coast also signed up Carmichael Hunt, also from Rugby League. I can remember that didn't end up going so well, but you think that basketball might be a possibility for the AFL?
I think so, and if that's the case, then we should try out other sort of professionals from other sports. Like, traditionally we have players with the cricket background, soccer background, and as you mentioned, rugby league. We should broaden our focus and recruit players from other sports like maybe golf.
Golf? You think golf might be a possibility?
Oh, I'm sure they can. I mean, they walk around, long distance, don't they? They have endurance.
Well, I'm not sure if it's the same sort of endurance, but AFL is quite an innovative code, so I think it should be looking at other fields. Why stop at golf? Maybe they should be looking at snooker or chess or badminton or hockey or soccer, even darts.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. And did you hear the news that Adelaide signed the beach volleyball player?
Well, that sounds like quite an innovative thing to do.
Try and find my favorite shade. Means what you like me. So back, let's go. My love is great. Jump on. Let's dance a little.
One other issue that has come up during the week is state of origin.
Whoa, state of origin revival. Now, it's been sort of weird. The AFL selecting, players for the games that do not exist. I thought it was a bit weird. These guys are selected for Big V and South Australia, Western Australia, of course, and the Allies. I thought that concept was dead and buried some 20 years ago, wasn't it?
The last time that a State of Origin game was played was in 1999, and that was Victoria against South Australia.
And the result of that game, no one cares to remember. I think there were only 26,000 fans at the G. I think it was in that game Josh Fraser got injured and cutting short his career. But that's the sort of issues the coaches don't want to have. So there is a reluctance. The clubs giving the sort of players to what is called representative games.
Well, the other factor is that we could have this state of origin concept, but effectively we're playing state of origin every single weekend. We've got teams in different states playing against each other. So isn't that like a state of origin, state against state type of situation? Except
for, of course, Tasmania and territories. But you could say, every week we have a West Coast playing against Sydney, and the Sydney, Great Western Sydney playing against the Gold Coast. And that concept of state of origin is very big in rugby league, isn't it?
Yes, it is very big in rugby league, but it effectively is just between two states, between New South Wales and Queensland.
But that's the only states that code is played, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. But also I think this state-based idea, it's a little bit limiting, like based around the idea that if you're born in a particular part of Australia, you should play for that state, but I think it should be extended. It shouldn't be just state of origin, it should be country of origin.
Oh, that sounds good. What sort of countries we can have?
There are many countries that we could have. We could have players of Italian origin against the players of Greek origin.
There are quite a few of those in the history of AFL, but do we have enough Italians or Greek origins to field a team or two?
I'm sure we do. Like, we could easily have a game between Ukrainian players and Russian players, for example.
and we get some players, former players, out of retirement, and we can have a field day.
I think we could. We could have teams of Croatian players against Serbian players.
Oh, are you inciting? Are you predicting the war to begin?
No, but I think that AFL is a game of peace, and AFL has had a strong political role in the past, and I think these could be games that could resolve world peace. Like we could have a game between North Korea and South Korea, even though there's been very, very few players that have originated from North Korea or South Korea, but we could have one or two. I'm sure that there's been one or two in the history of AFL that have played in the AFL from North Korea and South Korea, and then fill up the team with other Australian players, for example. That would be a big gift for world peace.
Yes, I think there was a player, Peter Bell. I think he's got a bit of South Korean origin.
We could also extend the concept to an Israeli team and a Palestinian team as well.
What a brilliant idea. Now, going back to the state of origin, if that to take place, the other question is, when should it take place? That's the other sort of stumbling block.
Well, we wouldn't be able to play it during the season because I think the season currently is a little bit too long. 22 games plus the finals of 4 rounds. I think what they could do is do it as a curtain raiser to the AFL Grand Final.
Wow, that sounds a radical new idea. But what about those teams competing in the Grand Final?
Well, they would just have to miss out.
So if it is game between Sydney and the West Coast, the players from those teams can't represent their states.
Only if they're playing in the grand final.
Yeah, okay. Oh, that sounds good. Now, what about the selections? I didn't like the idea of selectors when I looked at those teams announced on AFL website. Isn't it about time fans should be given some sort of say?
So you're referring to the Victorian State of Origin team that was announced during the week in the media?
I was talking about that.
Well, I think this concept should be extended even further. They could do it for the Victorian State of Origin team, the South Australian State of Origin team, but they could also extend this to the All-Australian team. They don't actually play anyone, so it doesn't really matter. That's where I think it should go.
I do agree. And, my point is, there should be a more fan-based and, it's not sort of choosing the Prime Minister or your members, but, we should have real votes.
I think so, and it should be through the internet or by some sort of phone poll or something like that. But I think it's a great idea. It could be extended, as I mentioned, to the All-Australian team as well. And my feeling is that in a few years' time, if this process is quite successful, it could be extended to clubs as well. So the Sydney Swans playing against the Western Bulldogs, it's not the coach or the selection committee that decides who plays in the team, but it's done by a phone poll.
That sounds radical, but you heard it here first.
On the protected zone. One of the great features that we have within the protected zone is that we decide which team should receive a new team song. Because most of them, as far as we're concerned, are not that good. Some of them are okay, but most of them are not that good.
I think this week we should look at the North Melbourne Kangaroos. Isn't that funny? A few years back, they just wanted to be known as simply as Kangaroos. They tried to drop the North Melbourne tag, but they seem to have regained it.
Yes, they were North Melbourne, then they became the Kangaroos officially, and then they became North Melbourne again. So I prefer them as North Melbourne. But one thing that they've never done is that they've never changed the song.
That's pretty good, but it's about time they should get a new haircut. New team song.
Yes, let's listen to the team song.
So join in the chorus and sing Melbourne is the team that plays to win for you and me.
I'm not that familiar with the North Melbourne team song, but what do you think about it?
Well, I'm not sure either because, their songs haven't been played very often. They've been managed to win honourable losses, if you know what I mean, all this season, all this year. So I haven't had very, very many chance to listen to their songs, but it's not very good. No, it's about time they should get a fresh coat of painting.
Well, we'll announce the new North Melbourne team song, and they haven't had such a successful season this year, but with a new team song, we think that they'll flourish, and we'll introduce that to you at the end of the program. We've got round 12 coming up pretty soon. Now, it's another one of those, it's not exactly a split round, but there's only 6 games in the round. Normally we have 9. I feel a little bit shortchanged.
I agree with you. I think the buys should be gone, or, we just have a one footy-free weekend.
What are the big games that you can see in round 12?
Well, obviously the Melbourne versus Collingwood on Queen's birthday Monday seems to be the biggest one because I think Melbourne's on the 9th on the ladder, Collingwood is on the 10th. Both of them have got better percentage than the teams above, West Coast and Fremantle.
It's a very, very unusual situation. Mathematically, I'm not sure how it all works out, but it's a little bit unusual looking at the ladder in that particular way. But yes, these teams are going pretty well this year.
As far as they are concerned, they're hovering around thereabouts, and they have still got a very good chance of making top 8. That means they may play in September. And this game is, almost it. They often talk about it's 8-pointer.
Oh, the classic 8-point game. The most important thing about this game is what sort of crowd will they get? Do you think they'll reach the 90,000 mark?
Oh, that's quite possible. They're talking it up, before the game starts or even the game is announced or whatever. Queen's birthday Monday is a big, big occasion. Yeah, 90,000, maybe slightly less. But, judging from the way Collingwood's playing for last 3 weeks, it's not too difficult. All the disillusioned Collingwood fans may turn up.
Well, let's hope they do. I see this game not so much a game of skill versus skill or Melbourne versus Collingwood, but I see it as a game of irony because Australia, let's face it, is a little bit of a Republican type of country, but it's still got the Queen as head of its state. So it's playing this massive game. It's a Republican in sentiment type of country, but yet it's got a holiday to celebrate the Queen's birthday, and it's not even the Queen's birthday.
Yeah, I wonder what she feels like, Probably a lot of people send, message on her Facebook account or something, happy birthday, Queen. In the meantime, it's not really her birthday.
No, so it's a very odd situation politically. I'm sure there will be a fantastic game, but it just seems quite weird having the Queen's birthday match on her birthday supposedly, or celebrating her birthday, but it's not her birthday. And she's getting on a little bit. She is 91, but in the future, will we see a King's birthday match?
Do we still maintain the monarchy?
Well, that's a good question. I'd much rather see Melbourne against Collingwood played on Republican Day.
He was a wandering all over the streets. Sing 6 months, think no sentence. Yeah, 1 year and no time. I was born in Angola, serving 14 to 99. But I wish I had.
There's another grand match that's happening on the weekend. There's the rematch of the 1997 grand final, and that's Adelaide against St Kilda.
And I can say who won, because St Kilda hasn't won the grand final since 1966. So Adelaide won that day. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. In fact, you could ask anyone that question. as long as you say that it's not 1966, well, people will automatically know that they didn't win the grand final.
Yes, in this game, Adelaide will be tested, even though they're playing at home and feeling a bit more secure and safe. But they've got a lot to prove, whether they are real deal or not. And St Kilda, with 5 wins, they've still got a chance to make the top 8.
Yes, I do. I think it will be quite an intriguing game. I think that Adelaide should win that game, though.
Yeah, Adelaide. I'll go with the Adelaide because, St Kilda lost, the heart of the Saints, Nick Riewoldt.
Yeah, so they won't win the game without him. Speaking of grand final rematches, we've got a more recent grand final rematch, and that's on Thursday night. I know that you don't like Thursday night games, but it's Sydney against Western.
Sydney against Western. Now, who's the Western?
Well, this is the thing that we keep pointing out. West of what? Western who? It's actually the Western Bulldogs, but it's a strange moniker for the Western Bulldogs. But anyway, just wanted to make that point. But yes, it is the grand final rematch from last year. It's the Sydney Swans against the Western Bulldogs, and that's being played on Thursday night.
It seems like a long time ago, the grand final. It's only last year. It's only a few months back. Sydney, their season seems to be almost over. If they lose this one, I think it's the end. And Western Bulldogs, on the other hand, I think they, still a top 4 chance. Yeah, it's a lot going on, but I'll go for the Doggies.
I'll go for the Western Bulldogs as well, or Western. And most other media outlets, they do love to focus on the top teams or the match of the round and that sort of thing, but we like to look at other possibilities as well. So one game that I'd like to focus on is Hawthorn against Gold Coast.
Oh yeah, lots going on, and as I said, Hawthorn, what sort of team do they field? Do they get a lot of kids on board, or do they still select the best available 22? Now that's one of the things I would like to see. What's yours?
Well, that's one thing that I definitely want to see what's happening with Hawthorn for the rest of the year, whether they are going to do the tanking, play the younger players, or what they'll do. But Gold Coast, they're not travelling too badly. They did defeat the West Coast last weekend. So they did defeat Hawthorn by 86 points earlier on in the season. So that wasn't actually that long ago. So my feeling is that Gold Coast can win this match, and they probably will, even though it's played at the MCG. They don't play there very often, and I believe that they've never actually won a game at the MCG. So could be the first time for them on the weekend.
Oh yeah, we've been hearing about the new history pages written every week, so why not? I think I'll go for Gold Coast. Okay,
Gold Coast for me. Brisbane versus Fremantle. Any game that involves Brisbane is always a bit of a downer, but what can we expect to see in this game?
I think this could be the upset of the round, and the Brisbane may even... Well, I think Brisbane's going to stand up and, tell the whole world, there's a team in Brisbane.
And do you think they've got any chance of making the finals this year?
Maybe, unless the season's extended for another 30 week or 40 weeks.
So no chance at all. So they've got a pretty good chance of winning on the weekend. You're predicting an upset. It won't make any difference to their finals chances. I'm going for an upset as well. I like the look of Brisbane.
Yeah, okay, Brisbane.
Just 2 more games to go in this round. One of them is Essendon against Port Adelaide. Could be very interesting, this one.
Yes, Essendon has got a lot to play for. I mean, they went down last week, so they need to regain their lost ground. While Port Adelaide, with such a high percentage, and the demolition job last week against Hawthorn, I think they can, look at the top 4. So, they want to keep on winning. And I think they can.
Well, it's a very tricky game for Essendon. Last weekend, as we mentioned earlier on in the program, Port Adelaide kept Hawthorn to their lowest half-time score ever, just 3 points in the first half. Do you think Essendon have got any chance of scoring any points at all in the first half?
Yeah, that's a good point. Port Adelaide, to maintain that sort of healthy percentage, it means they're both good at defending and offending. And I think they're going to offend in this game. Essendon has got Joe Danaher, who is an exciting, player. I think they may be able to score a few goals in the first half, at least.
I think it will be a tight game. A lot of people are going to predict that Port Adelaide will win this game quite easily. I'm not so sure. Essendon are a pretty exciting team to watch. They pushed the Greater Western Sydney last weekend. I think it will be a close match, but Port Adelaide for me.
Yeah, I think Port will prevail in the end. It could be a close game.
Now, the final game to discuss, it's not actually the final game of the round. That's on Monday between Melbourne and Collingwood. But the final game that we are discussing is actually on Sunday. And for the second week in a row, there's only one game on the Sunday, and that's Carlton against Greater Western Sydney.
What's the weather?
I think it's going to be played under roof.
Oh, so it doesn't matter even if it's raining outside or not?
No, because Carlton are the classic wet weather team. They play fantastically well when it's pouring down with rain. If there's a lake on the ground, no problems at all. They'll win the game. But they're playing at the Docklands ground, which on Sundays is played under a closed roof for some reason. If it's played on a Saturday, they leave the roof open. Can you explain that?
Yeah, maybe for the occupational health and safety issues at work or something. I don't know. They need to protect the players.
Yes, they do need to protect the players. I think they also need to protect the grass as well. If the ground or the roof is closed at all times, the grass won't grow. So I think Friday nights is always closed. Saturdays, they leave the roof open. If it's in the evening, they close the roof. Sundays, they close the roof as well. So it's an odd policy. But yes, it's played in the middle of the day. So the roof will be closed on Sunday. I don't think Carlton have a chance at all.
Yeah, but GWS has got fewer injury problems, so I'll go for the Giants.
Giants for me as well. So that's a wrap-up of all the round 12 matches that we'll see on the weekend. It's going to be another exciting round. You've been listening to The Protected Zone, where we talk about everything about AFL and more. I'm Eddie J.
And it's Linton, and I'm signing off from sunny West Sumatra.
And you look out for those volcanoes. Hopefully it won't erupt too quickly for you. And we're going to go out with the new team song for North Melbourne.